This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London.
This is John Gallaghar, who does, who's one and a half PhD-Casts. Richard Blackmore, thank you. Yes, it's the other bit, and he's not here to make it today, but we'd love to get John here today, and he will be talking about PhD-Casts, which is a video podcasting series about sort of the research that people have undertaken. And Gemma Sou here, is called Viva-Voce, which is sort of an audio podcast series, and very much the same sort of idea of sort of recording people's research on the web. So our topic today is very much about podcasts and how that's being used as social media. So I will pass over to you both, if I may, and I'll just get the PowerPoint up.
Is that right?
Oh, if you use it, yes, yeah, that's fine.
Are you ready to go?
Yes, if you're willing.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for inviting me, Matt. It's really nice. We just come down from Manchester, so it's nice to have a little trip to London, a little holiday, a few days. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Viva-Voce, which is a website that I launched. It was like late summer last year, and want to say why, what's the idea behind that, why did I do it? So I'll just show the website in a second. So I'm a final year PhD student. I just handed in my PhD a few months ago, and through my experience of doing a PhD, I learned that it's all about publications. A lot of time, you're ranked on your publication, which I think is a little bit unfair because I think it should be the topic of your research that's the most important thing. That should be at the heart of how you're heard, how your research is heard, and how you're judged, so to speak. And then I started thinking about how I'm appearing online with this idea in mind about how my research is being heard, how I'm appearing online. I started looking at LinkedIn and academia.edu, which I'm sure a lot of you have profiles on. I started thinking, this is great, but it's very much focused on your CV. It's all about text, how much you can list, how much you've done, the emphasis on throw everything in, all your experience, the kitchen sink. So it's CV online, which doesn't really benefit me with no publications and very little experience being an early researcher. And also these sites, a lot of times they're linked, they're networked by who you know, you've worked with, who you've met. You see it says on LinkedIn who you might know, who might be within your network. I thought it should be the topic of your research that is the conduit that networks you, that gets your research heard. There should be more emphasis on what's the topic of your research, and then you can find the people working on that. Which I know ResearchGate does. They have like certain tags, but I thought building on that, what's a better medium than text that early career research can get the ideas across, and in an exciting way, a short and sweet way, because a lot of times people don't have a lot of time to invest in an article or a whole blog or more than that. So I thought podcast, and this orange sort of EasyJet looking website came about, and the idea here is that I'll just show you a little bit about it. So each person, I'll go on to a particular podcast. So let's go to Labour. So we have here, let's take Chanel. So the idea is each podcast is 4 minutes or less. And the idea is really get across your contribution, what's so exciting and interesting about your research. It doesn't have to be everything, all in detail. The idea is to be a taster of your research. Why is it so exciting? Why should people be interested in it? Why is it relevant, this whole so what impact question? And then the idea is that this acts as the taster for people to think, oh, this is really interesting. I want to read more about this researcher. I want to read their articles. I want to follow them on Twitter. I want to go to their blogs. So you can see here on the right, you'll have direct links to people's papers. So you click on that and you'll go straight through to Chamel's 2 papers. And that's what I'm trying to emphasize. It's only 2 papers. I don't want all your papers. Your 2 best papers, because I want to emphasize what you do, not how much you've done. So everyone's on a level playing field instead of saying, okay, I've done 20 articles and they're all in Nature. I mean, that would be amazing if you got 20 articles in Nature, but still, the idea is we're all on a level playing field, whether you've been doing academia for 20 years or not, it's a topic that we're interested in. And what else is there I can tell you? Yeah, so this is like a gateway, which is a better word for that. You can follow people on Twitter, if you have a blog, so you can click on people's LinkedIn, go straight through to their LinkedIn. And then also what I like about the website is that you're categorised by keywords. So just show an example there. So Samuel here, he's categorised, sorry, move down a bit. So he's categorised by these 3 keywords: ethnomusicology, religion and spirit possession. So say, for example, there's somebody else working on religion who's in a different discipline. You click on religion and you'll see Finley, who's in philosophy, not music, is working on religion too. I know these are broad keywords, but you can still go through and find...
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Does the participant select their keywords, or do you put the keywords?
They'll tell me their 3 keywords, and if they're too esoteric or a little bit, a bit too difficult to find, so I keep it quite broad. I'll give you a few pointers. I spoke to some journal articles about how they categorise articles, and they would give me some tips on how best. But yeah, it's a good point, because sometimes people put things, I don't even know what it's talking about, like how can people search for that?
Things are risk with PhD.
Yeah. So yeah, everybody's categorised by these 3 keywords, and that's, for me, that's really important to encourage this interdisciplinarity, because if we go to, I don't know, let's go for indigeneity. Okay, that's a good example. So if we click on indigeneity, we have here Anna, who's in geography, Philip, who's in planning, and Jessica, who's in development, and they're working on Bolivia, indigeneity in Bolivia, but they may not have contacted each other, but now they're on the same page, and they can say, oh right, Anna in Glasgow is working on this, I'll contact her, maybe she has some exciting papers, or I can read about her papers. So that's the idea, and trying to make a level playing field, so to speak, and put the topic of your research at the heart of how your research gets heard. And there are other sites that focus on podcasts, and John will tell you all about that. It's an amazing website. I want to focus on the 4-minute short ones, because a lot of times podcasts, the longer podcasts, can focus on big names, and you know that from other websites, they focus on big names in humanities and humanities. So I'm trying to give everybody a level playing field, so to speak. And it is really easy to set up. At the minute, it looks a bit of a faff, to be honest, and it's discouraging people, I think, from signing up, because I haven't got the funding yet to. I'm not a web design person at all. It's all Wix, which is like dummies guide to doing websites. So anybody can do this. If you want to set your own website up, you can do it on Wix. So as it stands, people have to email with a photo and the podcast, the audio they've recorded, and a form that they fill in. There's a bit of a faff really, so I'm trying to get the funding at the minute. So it's more streamlined, so like Facebook or LinkedIn, where you can just do it yourselves. And that's going okay. I've got some grants from different organisations. If anybody here has a few grants they'd like to throw my way, please feel free. And that's really what the website is in a nutshell. And if anybody wants to set any podcasts up, please feel free. I'll be able to put you up there straight away. That's me. Thank you very much.
I'm going to just leave it there, if that's all right.
If anybody wants to hear one, that's fine. Just play one.
Brilliant. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much for coming and for having me here. I'm John Gallaghar. I'm just finished my PhD, so I last month. Yes, delighted. and I am I'm 1/3 of the PhD-Casts, which we ran at Cambridge over the last 2 years, between myself, Ruth Rushworth, who's now at the University of Manchester, and Richard Blakemore, who's now at Oxford. So what I'm going to do before we begin is just give you this very, very short trailer that we shot. This is just under 2 minutes for one of our PhD-Casts with Danica Parrick, who is talking about the archaeology of the Indus civilization. So this is just to give you a taster of what they're actually like, and then I'll kind of go into how we make them and what we do with them.
And the thing about this area is that the architecture, it's mostly made of mud brick. They don't build with much else, but it's quite fascinating because they don't seem to be, again, building not necessarily larger houses or things like that. And this is one of the reasons why after this site was excavated, one of the theories about the Indus was that it's an egalitarian classless society, because the architecture seemed so dull and really there didn't seem to be much distinction between kind of the sizes of houses and things like that. And in fact, one of the archaeologists who dug it really early on in the 20s, he actually said it was as dull and orderly as a Lancashire mining town. I know, it's harsh on everyone.
I don't feel that was particularly fair, nor might I add particularly scholarly. Very much. Maybe moved on a little bit.
But I like it. It's one of my favourite quotes, I think, about in this scholarship, because I kind of imagine, he comes out to India and he sees this spectacular city. Really, it's enormous. It's one of the it's one of these sort of great old world cities.
Immediately thinks, Lancashire.
That's great.
Just obviously no records survived to show whether or not the Indus were any good at cricket, which would, whether they could beat Lancashire or not.
But if we're judging them based on the current salvation performance, they were probably awesome and a lot better than the English cricket.
There with making fun of the English is how I normally try to drive most conversations. So that's just a quick snippet. Let's have a little chat from the beginning. Here we go. So what are PhD-Casts? PhD-Casts are videos roughly between 30 minutes and 40 minutes long, which we shot with PhD researchers at the University of Cambridge. The reason that we came around to doing these was because we felt that there was actually quite a lot of stuff for scientists that didn't really exist in the arts and humanities. So quite a lot of programs for people to get their research out there, quite a lot of ways in which PhD students in particular could kind of get involved in public engagement programs and get their research to a wider public. We didn't think that this really existed, well, not that it didn't exist, but that it wasn't as well developed in the arts. We also thought that what there was in the arts, like Gemma was saying, that kind of big names, tended to be more aimed at not just postdocs, but also lecturers, these kind of high-powered public engagement positions. We felt that from talking to PhD researchers and from being researchers ourselves, that there was a huge amount of, everyone has these amazing stories from their own research, everyone has really interesting findings that quite often will be written for specialists and won't be accessed by the general public. We wanted to give people a chance to kind of, to bring those out a little bit. And as you saw when I spoke to Danica, one of the things that we also wanted to do was to give a sense of what doing a PhD is actually like, because people get very focused on findings and papers and things that come out of them, and we wanted to give people a little glimpse into the kind of day-to-day, whether it's, there's a bit at the end of Danica's PhD-Cast where she talks quite a lot about working in the field, and she actually brought in her travel, and we kind of had a conversation about what it's actually like excavating Indus sites, and that was something we thought. And similarly we had Eleanor Giraud, who gave a talk about 12th century Dominican musical manuscripts, and she was fantastic at talking about what it's like to work with medieval manuscripts. So we wanted to bring in process as well as results. They're quite long. These are, in the second season we tried to keep them to a half an hour. And one of the reasons that we did this was that we wanted to give people a chance to talk about the complexities and the difficulties, as well as giving us kind of, here's what I do. So we also tried to cut them down, so we had shorter trailers and shorter kind of teaser moments as well, so that people would hopefully find their way into the longer PhD-Casts. So that was kind of why we decided to do PhD-Casts. It had begun, myself and Richard had been talking for a long time, mostly in pubs, about doing something like this and about getting research out in a way like this. And we approached, with the help of Katie Barrett, who was one of our first PhD casters. You see here, she's now at the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich, and she's a researcher in history of science. Katie encouraged us to approach CRASH, the Centre for Research in the Arts, Social Sciences and Humanities, which is a fantastic acronym, at Cambridge. And when we approached them, we met Ruth Rushworth, who is, as will become clear, a genius, and without whom none of this would have happened. And Ruth talked, we originally wanted to do it as podcasts, and Ruth talked us into doing them as videos, so that we could upload them to YouTube and have them on kind of the university's iTunes and so forth. And she was really amazing on the technical side, which I'll go to as well. But Ruth kind of persuaded us to think big and to do this, and secured some support from CRASH, who lent us the equipment that we needed. So what happened next was that we did ultimately 2 seasons, each of 6 episodes. So I'm going to tell you a little bit now about the experience of filming PhD-Casts, about what it was like putting them together from start to finish, and then to getting those messages out. You'll see that when we come back to the whiteboard in a second. This was a very high-tech filming setup. So first of all, we had to pick our PhD casters. In season 1, we ended up working with largely the people we knew through history and philosophy of science, and through literature. And this meant that we did this in part because we wanted to know that we could trust people. We wanted to know that people would be able to speak in front of a camera for this kind of time. So we decided to go with people we knew, as it was kind of a pilot season. And this meant that the focus was more narrow than in the second season. In the second season, we did an open competition where we asked everyone to send us a short video or audio recording of them just on their phone, we said 90 seconds to 2 minutes, just telling us one thing about their research. So not giving us the whole lot, but we said if there's a particular story, a particular artifact, a particular document, tell us that story just so we get a sense of how you present your material. And then they sent us an abstract of the research that they did. And from that pile of applications, we chose our 6, which allowed us to be much broader. So in the second season, we had everything from the study of Samuel Beckett and quietism to Indus archaeology by way of ectonation in modern Canada, and poppy training programs in American prisons. So we had a real broad set of subjects coming from, we tried to get away from just doing history, just because we're both historians. And we were, I have to say, we were enormously lucky with the people that we got. They were really absolutely fabulous. And something, just as a side note, something that we'd actually worried about, or we'd planned for, we worried that there would be a gender imbalance in this, and that we'd get kind of more men volunteering and more men speaking up. We were delighted that that didn't happen, but that also we didn't end up with any just really horrible ratios. So we ended up, I think, making more PhD-Casts with women than men, which was interesting given a lot of what had been written about people not putting themselves forward, so we're happy with that. A little bit about what we did. Alliteration is unacceptable. A little bit about what we did before each PhD-Cast. We had to find times and places and equipment for filming, which is a little more difficult when you're dealing with the 3 of us plus 6 PhD-Casters. We usually did 2 PhD-Casts in a day. In some cases, I think on 1 or 2 occasions, we shot 3, which will explain, if you see them, why I appear to be losing my grip somewhat towards the end. But we found it was doable. I mean, one thing that I'll come back to a little bit is these did take a huge amount of time. I was speaking to Ruth yesterday, and she said if you actually put all of the time together, including preparation and editing, and all of the kind of advertising and stuff, it's roughly 10 hours per PhD-Cast. So it's quite a heavy time investment. We also had to get a theme tune. Luckily, Richard locked himself up with a lot of cups of tea and his guitar, and we came out with a nice one, which you can hear on the website. And then my own job, so I was the interviewer for all of these, and my main job was to meet with each of our PhD-Casters a couple of days before we were due to record their PhD-Cast. we'd go for a cup of tea, we'd talk for an hour or two. And this was, number one, to put them at ease, which I thought was number three, hopefully. But just to kind of give them a sense of what we were trying to do with the PhD-Casts, what we hoped that they could bring, but also to let them know, I think some people can be quite wary, to let them know that there was no, this wasn't a gotcha kind of thing. If they flunked something, we weren't going to leave it in, we were there to show them in the best possible light. But we also used this time to work out, so they would explain the work to me, I'd ask a lot of very stupid questions, and we would work out what the arc of the interview was going to be, what kind of needed to be set out in the introduction, what we wanted to hit along the way, and the conclusions they wanted to reach at the end. And as the presenter, I kind of tried to be the average audience member who doesn't know, who isn't a specialist in the subject, who's reasonably intelligent, but who might need quite a lot of context for something, say, like the Indus or like Sam Beckett. So that was great because it meant that when we arrived in on the day to record the actual PhD-Cast, we had a sense of the topics we were going to hit, and the order we were going to hit them, without it ever needing to be very scripted. This is a little bit on technical setup. Now we'll be putting up a blog post from Ruth with all of this in much more detail, so don't worry too much about this. We had two cameras on the go at all times, as you would have seen there, one directly on the PhD-Caster and one on both of us. And that meant that we had to take breaks roughly every 15 minutes in the filming, which was actually quite nice. It gives you a chance to kind of take a breath, to ask the PhD-Caster if they're happy with how it's going. And generally that worked quite well. We made some modifications in the audio way of dealing with things because we had coffee cups and they kept ruining things. And lots of banging things around. And there's a lot more information on this is going to go on the website if anyone wants to follow it up. This is the slightly less technical stuff. We needed to work out a way for Ruth and Richard to communicate with me without interrupting the flow of the conversation. So we had a whiteboard that was in my eyeline but wasn't in the PhD-Caster's eyeline. We tested a number of markers until we found the least squeaky one. And it meant that they could write up, you know, ask about this, get a definition of this word, we need more context, something like that. As it happened, we didn't need to use it too much, but it was really helpful to have. There was no need for anyone to, when someone was in mid-flow, there was no need for somebody to jump in and say, sorry, could you ask about this? So it looks a little more natural than it might otherwise. You can't really tell how many people there are in the room when you look at them. Except we did one wonderful one where Richard sneezed off camera. And if you look at it, you can just see Eleanor Giraud just kind of turns and says, oh, bless you, and then kind of comes back through. So quite nice little moments. And we said reshooting in breaks we could do whenever we stopped. We had coffee in vast amounts and biscuits in equally vast amounts. Well, this is the digital production and editing. It's all done in Final Cut Pro X. And again, in the tech blog post that's going on quite soon, you'll be able to get all of this in as much detail as you'd like. I'll say it again at the end, but we are very, very happy to field any questions that people have, because one of the purposes of coming here and putting all of this in the public domain is that we are very, very keen for people to do stuff like this themselves. So if you have any interest in running PhD-Casts in your own institution, please do talk to us. After things had been edited and put together, thanks to the technical genius of Ruth, we had to get the word out there. So we decided that with each PhD-Cast we would release one a week during Cambridge term time. And before that we would do a season trailer, so a couple of minutes of us just having a chat about what people could expect, and maybe teasers for some of the stories that they hear. I think we released them on Thursday mornings about noon. And beforehand we'd always put up a short teaser like the one that you saw with Danica, just to get things moving. We found Twitter enormously helpful for this, and Facebook. So Crash has a very, very strong social media presence, and they were very active in putting the word out, in retweeting our stuff, and in putting up material on their own website and their own Facebook page. We used different PhD-Casts for season 1 and season 2, but that allowed us to kind of search and see what people were saying. And we also encouraged our PhD-Casters, if they wanted to join Twitter and to get involved. A number of them did, as did Richard as well, and we built kind of quite a community of people chatting about it. That allowed us to engage with people at other universities, with outreach groups in Cambridge itself and in the various colleges. and also with institutions like the School for Advanced Studies. I say wider media coverage. We did talk to the Cambridge Publicity Department, and we got a small story in the Cambridge News, which we were all very, very proud of. But we managed to, I think, get quite a lot more reach through working with social media. And just to talk at the very end just about outcomes, we were delighted with the response that PhD-Casts got. A number of them, so we made 12 in all, a number of them got well over 1,000 views, certain of which we managed to kind of peg to particular events. So a couple of months after we shot Mark King's PhD-Cast, which talks about Richard II, there was the live streaming of the David Tennant Richard II from the RSC, which was going out to cinemas across the country. So we were able to kind of point that up and say, well, why don't you come and find out about a bit more about the historical context. We also had with the Beckett PhD-Cast, I think was picked up by a Beckett website and shared quite a lot by its members and by scholars working on Beckett. So we were delighted with the kind of outcome and the feedback, and we did try and ask people questions towards the end of the first series to see what we could change. For the PhD-Casters themselves, I think it's been really valuable, and they got the experience of bringing their work to a wider public. And I think for no one was it a kind of box-ticking exercise, but I think people have really benefited from having it on their CV, that they've had a kind of experience of public engagement, experience of putting their work into terms that that the public might understand better. People like we had Alice Blackhurst, who talked about luxury in 20th century France, teamed up with the university publicity department and did a fantastic piece for the university website on her work. We had a couple of things like that. And I think people have found now that they're on the job market that it's really, really helpful to be able to have that particular string to their bow, but also to be able to say to, whether it's an employer in academia or to a reporter who wants comment on a story, to be able to say, oh, yeah, you can actually see me talking about this, to be able to send them the URL. So if you're interested in pitching to radio, for instance, or TV, to be able to have essentially an audition tape that shows what you're like in front of camera. People have found that very helpful as well. So, to conclude, if you want to find out more, you can watch the PhD-Casts. There's this rather unwieldy URL, but you can also just, if you search PhD-Casts on YouTube with Crash, with 2 S's, they'll all show up. You can contact all of us on Twitter or ask any questions here. And just to reiterate at the end that this is not something that we're, this is something that we're very keen to see people take up and do in other institutions. It helped us a huge amount. We think it helped our PhD-Casters, so we would very much like to encourage anyone who'd like to join us to do so. Thank you very much.